Hello and welcome to Invergrove Heights, where Dustin has kindly offered to help people change from their winter tires to the summer tires. And Dustin, how do you know about all this stuff?
So for about 10 years, I was a Toyota mechanic, and then for a little while, I worked at Tesla also.
You've changed a few tires over the years.
Yeah, quite a few, more than I could count.
And more today. So I just wanted to get the expert's opinion on kind of the process, what to look for, and we'll show some beautiful B-roll as we do that. And we had a camera assistant helping out, so some of these shots might be a little shaky, but it's all good fun. What is the basic process and what do you look for as you're doing these changes?
Generally, just depending on if you're using a jack or a car lift, if you're going to be jacking and you don't have an assistant with you to hold the brake pedal, you want to break loose the lug nuts first, just slightly. That way, when the car is up in the air and the wheel is spinning freely, you can still get the lug nuts off. And then check your owner's manual for direction of rotation. And then we also like to use the tire crayon to mark your tires. So that way, when you're changing over, you know what position the tire was on previously. So you're not putting it back in the same position.
I know when you put them on,
Tightening.
you want to go a certain tightening order
Yep.
to make sure you're tightening evenly.
Yep.
There's no necessary order for taking them off, though, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's mainly when you're torquing them on that you want to, if it's a 5-lug pattern, you want to do every other. So kind of a star pattern type of thing. And that just helps ensure that you're less likely to warp your brake rotors. Whereas if you did it in a circle, by the time you get to that last one, the other ones aren't as tight. That's the logic behind why you do that.
When the car is still touching the ground, you've broken those lug nuts free, and then you can raise it, remove the rest of the lug nuts, and then pop the tire off.
Yep.
Basically, just go around the car doing that. Lifting the car for Teslas, you either should be using the little jack pucks.
Yep.
Or you had a little different system here with the lifts here.
So my quick jacks have like rubber blocks, and they come up high enough that you're not actually lifting with the metal of the jack or with the lift. It's resting on the rubber parts. But still lifting on that exact same spot where those holes are in the battery pack where you would put the pucks up into.
Sure. That's the recommended don't hurt the battery position. So then once it's in the air, all the tires are off. It's just a matter of lifting them off, and you have a pretty slick method of lifting the new tires on, kind of bracing it with your feet to help with the weight.
So I like to look at the lug nuts on the brake rotor and then somewhat line up the direction. So if you have one lug nut that's at the very top, roll your wheel so that one lug nut opening is up at the top, and then kind of shimmy your feet underneath the wheel and then just lift your toes up going onto your heels and to lift that tire up a good 3-4 inches. It's kind of easier than trying to manhandle it and line up easier.
Yeah.
Much easier.
Let's talk about tightening, but then I also want to talk about some of the things you were looking for as we were switching the tires as far as tread depth and stuff. But when you brought the lug nuts back on, you were using the impact gun. Yeah.
Yep. If you've done it a few times, it's not so bad, but generally you want to start the lug nuts on by hand first. I was doing it directly with the impact gun, but if you're not careful while doing that, you risk cross-threading the lug nut. Then you've got a much bigger job ahead of you.
That sounds awful.
Right.
And so then you do the every other pattern,
Yep.
tightening the lug nuts on. And then once you get them on with the impact gun, then you're going around with a torque wrench and getting those sets.
Tesla recommends, at least on the 3s and Ys, is 129 foot-pounds. And then you also, with the torque wrench, you want to do that same kind of star pattern.
And I also noticed you were double checking. After you did it once, you did it a second time just to make sure everything's torqued correctly and secure.
Yep. Long time ago, when I was much younger, I accidentally was zipping some on and was in a rush and left one lug nut that wasn't tight. So got to the exit ramp and heard a loud sound. And so after that, always double torque all the lug nuts just for peace of mind.
Good idea. So as you were going, you were checking tire wear and tread depth and things like that. What exactly were you looking for?
So tread depth, usually I like to check 3 positions in the tire tread and a little tread depth gauge. Generally, new tires are about 10-30 seconds of tread, and then when you're down to 2 is usually the legal limit where you definitely need to replace them. I would usually recommend if you're below 4 is probably a good time to start looking at getting tires. And then as far as tread wear, it's kind of usually done by hand, just kind of feeling it. And you're looking for like scalloping, kind of like high and low spots that can indicate out of alignment specs, or bad shocks can also cause that, especially when you see like maybe every third or fourth tread block is like lower than the other ones. That's usually indicative of a bad shock. If you have what we call feathering, where the tread is kind of like has a sharp edge on the backside of the tread block, that can indicate like your toe is out, so your tires are pointing too far in or too far out. And then there's camber wear, where if your tire is tilted too far in at the top, you're going to wear on the inside tread block more.
So just basically looking for tire health.
Yep.
And making sure you don't see a sign of a bigger mechanical problem.
Uneven tread wear, or the feel of the tread blocks. If there's like weird edges to it, that's kind of a sign of a misalignment in your car suspension.
As we were doing this, because we were up on the lifts, you had somebody sit in the car to tighten the front tires.
Yep.
And then not worry about the back tires.
For Tesla specifically, the parking brake or the emergency brake is on the rear tires. So anytime it's in park, rear tires are going to be held by the parking brake. So you can torque those just freestanding up in the air, whereas the front tires will just free spin. So having someone sit in the front seat and apply the brakes kind of locks the tire in place, so you can torque it without having the tire on the ground. Mm-hmm. And I just like doing that because then you can be more confident that you're getting a nice even torque on all the lug nuts, versus if there's weight on the tire, then you're putting more friction into the whole equation.
Sure. But if you were doing this with a jack, one side at a time, you would have to lower it down.
So when I do that, I lower it just till the suspension is just slightly compressing. Basically, you put your torque wrench on there and you'll know if the tire is going to hold or if it's going to free spin. Sure. So then I just lower it down enough that it's just contacting the ground enough that it doesn't spin.
Great. Is there any other words of wisdom you want to share?
Read your owner's manual. No one ever does that, as far as like tire rotation, mileage, and direction of the pattern of rotation. If you live in a cold climate, I highly suggest getting a whole second set of rims and winter tires, rather than just swapping rubber onto the same rims. I feel like it's a lot easier. Ultimately, I think it saves you more money by having the second set of rims, and you can just swap winter to summer sets by yourself.
Yeah, and this was, obviously you've done it a ton, so it's very efficient, but it was very quick to do 3 cars in almost no time. So
I like rotating every 5,000 to 7,500 miles. So it kind of depends on what type of driving you do. Put on a ton of miles, or if you have multiple cars and you don't drive one as much as the other during different times of the year.
I think that covers the basics. Hopefully we made it all make sense with B-roll and a little bit of editing. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise, your garage, and helping everybody get ready for summer.
Sure. Happy to.
Thanks a lot.